Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of this Legend of Korra Book Free review series. So this week we're covering In Harm's Way and The Metal Clan. Two very strong episodes, I feel. I have a lot of positive things to talk about in these two episodes. A couple of negatives, but we'll get to that. So we start off the first episode of this pair with Combustion Woman being broken out of prison by Zaheer and the other benders he's freed. She basically is Combustion Woman. Like, her powers are exactly the same as Combustion Man from the original Avatar series. One thing I do miss is the sound design for the Spark Spark Boom, because in the original series they did a really good job of building up the explosion. So there was this like spark, spark, boom, like spark, spark, boom. So it was like there was this build-up of tension, knowing that the explosion was going to happen, and the sound design really helped inform that in the original series. Here it's much quicker. It's like spark, spark, boom, spark, spark, boom, and you lose some of that. They immediately go to the explosion, and I don't know. I'm not saying like I wish it was exactly the same as the original series. At the end of the day, this is a different character, and it looks like she's actually going to be, fleshed out. Unlike Combustion Man, who was just kind of like a mini boss, really. Just he was a physical threat rather than a real proper fleshed out character like Azula was in the original series. So yeah, I think it's Pali's her name. I think Pali's going to be interesting going forward. She certainly seems to have a lot of venom focused towards Tonrok, Korra's father, because like she gives him the evils real bad here. So it'll be interesting to see if they explore why she feels really negatively towards Tonrok in later episodes. I know they're probably going to do some flashback episodes this season at some point. They always do, so we'll see how that plays out. Also just wanted to mention that Minghua, the amputee waterbender, the choreography for her in this opening prison break was very impressive. She's a lot more economical than the other waterbenders. The other waterbenders are quite slow and deliberate in their movements, just like Tai Chi, as we've come to expect. She's very efficient. Like she doesn't waste movement the way other waterbenders do. She's kind of like an earthbender or firebender in that regard. Both those styles of bending are very, straightforward and direct, whereas airbending and waterbending is a bit more indirect, much more about circling around your opponent and using your opponent's energy against you, whereas Minghua's bending seems very direct and efficient. She forms that drill out of her arms and immediately smashes down into the prison and then starts falling towards the... It's really impressive action sequences so far in Book 3. And Studio Mir's animation. I'm so glad they're doing all of the animation this season, because they're the best. I'm sorry, they're the best 2D animation studio in the world right now, in my opinion. They're so good. So what else? One thing I really wanted to comment on is how tight and intimate the group is. There's the shot once Pali and is set free of them in the little snow truck, and Zaheer and her kiss. Obviously they're in a relationship, but there was this, like, they're really friendly towards each other, the whole group, and I got Team Avatar flashbacks. Like, it felt like that kind of group. And I really wonder whether they're going to play on that more as they go on. That this group feels justified in their crusade, and I wonder if it's going to play out like that. That they feel like they're like this merry band of heroes trying to save the world, much like the original team from the original series is. Like, I hope they play on that, because that's a really interesting dynamic to have for a group of antagonists, if that is the case, that they're really going to play on the fact that these guys are quite similar to the group that we had from the original series. And one thing I should comment on now is I really like the looping narrative that's going on here in this episode. So we start with a prison break, and then they end in a prison break, and I think that's deliberate. Like, they're deliberately trying to make you think, form connections in your mind between the two events. Like, here we have a group of people that you're supposed to not like who are being set free, and here's a group of people who you're supposed to like being set free. But is there really much difference between the way these two groups of people are being treated? I think the writers are trying to plant that seed in your mind of like these are two very similar situations. The only difference is your perspective on, your perspective and your perceived what you perceive to be the motivations of the characters involved in both situations. So that's really interesting, because I think that's a clue as to what the motivations of these antagonists is going to be. Like, the writers are giving you a clue that these guys aren't as simple. These guys are not simple villains, basically. There's something more complex going on there, and having that looping narrative for this episode where they're deliberately trying to get the audience to form a connection between one event and the other event in the audience's mind, it's really clever. I think it's really interesting. And Zaheer actually gets, we'll get onto that later, but Zaheer's we don't get a fully solidified idea of what his motivations are in the next episode after this one, but we get some hints and some clues. I'll go into that in a minute. I want to just finish up my thoughts on this this episode. So what have we got here? Oh right, I'll mention this now so we can move on to other events in this episode. But we find out from Lin Beifong and Tenzin later on in this episode that Zaheer's group is actually the reason why Korra was sheltered to begin with. They attempted to kidnap her, and that makes a lot of stuff that happened earlier on in the books, earlier books in Korra, make a lot more sense. So I like that these villains are informing on past events in this TV show. And a positive in general about Book 3 so far, it's making Korra feel much more solid, a TV show. Like, everything feels more solidified now. Like, after Book 2, I still liked Korra as a TV show, but I was kind of like, we're not soaring to the same heights of the original series, are we here? It's a bit messy. Whereas Book 3, it's cleaning things up. It's making things much more solid, and yeah, I really like that. So now we need to move on to talk about the events that are going on in Ba Sing Se with Korra and the Earth Queen and the Airbender army. Quick note on the Earth Queen. I'm kind of not liking how exaggerated a character she's becoming. This seems like a really ridiculous criticism, given that this is an animated show, but she comes off as cartoonish. Like, really exaggerated to the point of... I don't know, I can't really take her seriously at the moment. And I having seen the Metal Clan episode, I kind of know now why they've gone in the direction they've gone in with Ba Sing Se and the people ruling it. There's going to be a contrast between the two cities coming later on. That's really interesting, but I think they're laying it on a little bit too thick with the Earth Queen. I don't like Varric was a good comical villain in book 2 because they didn't lay it on too thick. He was over the top, but not too much. At least from what we've come to expect from this series, the Earth Queen's getting a bit too much for me, but maybe she'll get better as we go along. We've only had 2 episodes with her, so I don't know. So basically, Bolin and Marco reveal to Korra that they are indeed capturing airbenders and secreting them away, and are training them to be part of the Earth Kingdom army, and they plan to free them. Basically, they come up with a plan to free them, but they can't really think of where they're being kept. So the first thought is maybe the Dai Li are keeping them in Lake Laogai, which makes sense because that was their base of operations in the original series. It makes sense to visit there. But using Janora's astro projection, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, they find out that Lake Laogai is completely flooded. It's not being used at all. It hasn't been used for a while. Let's talk about Janora's astro projection. It's suggested that it's high-level airbending. I don't like that. If they're saying that astro projection is to airbending what metal bending is to earth bending, lightning is to fire bending, and blood bending is to water bending, I'm not happy with that. I'm fine with it being like a high-level, like, spiritual technique. Fine. Astral projection, whatever, that's fine. But if you're saying that astral projection is in any way connected to airbending, I'm not okay with that. I'd much prefer if sound or something like that was connected, because sound is basically just vibrating air molecules, air molecules. Yeah, I got it right first time. Vibrating air molecules. So if molecules in the air, whatever, science, you know what I mean. If they were going to have something that is connected to air in some way, I think having like the air vibrate to create sound or something like that would be a more interesting high level air bending technique, because it's connected in some way. And that's why I like the other ones, because they feel metal is purified earth, makes sense. Lightning is energy, much in the same way that fire is energy, makes sense. Blood bending, 75% of our bodies are water, that makes sense. Astral projection just seems like a completely different thing. We'll see how it goes, but I'm kind of not happy with that being high-level airbending. But anyway, it's a quick, efficient way of establishing Lake Laogai is not on their radar as a place where the Dai Li are hanging out, and it helps them quickly find where they are, because Janora has a spiritual connection with Kai, who's been captured in the previous episode, and they find them that way. And then they set them free! Yay! And then they escape, and the Queen's not happy with that. So what else have we got here in this episode? Just to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. So Janora's astral projection, we covered that. Zaheer's group, the reason, yeah, we could cover that. And yeah, again, like, just to reinforce the fact, there is a reason why they started with a prison break and ended with a prison break. They want you to form a connection in your mind between those two events. And, try to make you think, okay, yeah, I may believe these guys are villains, but I feel very differently to these characters who are in the exact same situation. So what's the connection there? Am I meant to be feeling, are they hinting at the fact that I should maybe be rethinking the way I feel towards Zaheer's group? Also, you get a lovely moment at the end of this episode where Tenzin finally gets what he wants, where with a group of airbenders who actually want to become air nomads in it. And I like this because it totally makes sense for them to say yes, because they've been rejected by their own culture, by the Earth Queen. So it makes sense that like, if I've been rejected by the culture that I loved, I'm going to embrace this new culture, and it's a clever way of getting over the issues that they raised with previous episodes, where people weren't happy. The people who were airbenders weren't happy with the idea of becoming air nomads. It's clever. It's just, yeah, it makes sense, and I like things making sense narratively. Okay, and then we move on to the episode called The Metal Clan. This has been one of my favourite episodes of Korra, full stop. I think it's really strong, lots of great characterization in this series. So basically it starts out with the group finding out that some more airbenders have been found in Zaofu, the city where the Metal Clan lives. In the last episode, they set free the airbenders from the Earth Kingdom, and now Korra's gone off with Lin Beifong, and Tenzin's taken off the airbenders that escaped to the Northern Air Temple. And so we come to Zaofu, and I suddenly, when seeing Zaofu for the first time, I suddenly realised why the writers had the build-up of, like, oh, we're gonna go see Ba Sing Se again, so excited, and then it'd be like an utter disappointment that Ba Sing Se is in such a horrible state, because Zaofu is kind of the new Ba Sing Se, and there are a lot of things that are different about it, that about it that contrast with Ba Sing Se, that demonstrate that this is a more progressive city, this is a more positive city, and the people in charge of it should really be in charge of the Earth Kingdom. The most striking thing immediately is the architecture with the metal flowers that close and that close at night, which I think is just is a really cool thing to animate, watching those metal flowers close at night but be completely open. But there's some really nice symbolism there, in that these cities are like, instead of using walls like Ba Sing Se uses, like a series of walls that blocks off everyone from the outside, this is an open flower. Like it's inviting people in, like we want people to come here. It closes at night, so they are here, they are designed to protect the people, but like just that symbolic, like an open flower thing, being inviting, being like, come to our city, we want people, unlike the wall, which is like, no one come in, Also, a thing I noticed, like, because there are several metal flower like communities, instead of walls dividing these communities, there are bridges. Which is another little symbolic thing, like these groups of people are connected to each other, unlike in Ba Sing Se where they're walled off from each other. So this is a really positive city, where everyone's connected to each other, they're open to new people. And it's beautiful. It looks the whole city looks beautiful, unlike Ba Sing Se where it's only the rich part that looks beautiful. So I'm really excited to see more of this city, because it feels like the capital the Earth Kingdom deserves, rather than the one it has right now. And we also get introduced to a new character in Su Yin, who is Lin Beifong's half-sister. So she's introduced actually doing this metal bending dance, which looks beautiful and is really well choreographed. She's basic. I think she exists to contrast with the Earth Queen, because in a lot of ways she's like the complete opposite, or at least what the Earth Queen should be aspiring to be. She has very progressive views about leadership. She's wealthy, she's clearly well moneyed, but she's funneling that money towards the people, to the benefit of everyone. Like her husband is an architect and he's building this railroad, and you have to think, okay, she's possibly funneling that money towards other causes as well. Like, she's helping her community, she's making her community a better place. She's not just accumulating this wealth and spending it selfishly. She gives lots of people a second chance. Like, her cook is a former pirate. She's all about giving people second chances at making their life better. Well, we're on that fact, Varric's back, and I'm really happy about that, because although I wasn't a big fan of the main antagonist of Book 2, Varric, the secondary antagonist, was a really great character, and I'm really glad to see him back. And I hope he has a major role. I have a feeling he's not. I think he's going to kind of just be comic relief, which is fine. I'm just glad he's back. He's so funny. Just I'm not gonna quote him, but he has some funny lines this episode. What else? Yeah, just like, there was this conversation with her and Korra at the dinner table where she's kind of encouraging Korra to think about the world in a more modern way, a more progressive way, and it's really positive to see that character. Just immediately, Su Yin is a character I really connect with. I think having her also really characterises Lin, which I'm going to touch on in a minute. But her children are really fascinating. Two of them have invented a new sports game. One of them's a really misunderstood artist. And then there's Opal, who is the new airbender that they've discovered here. Opal's not particularly well characterised yet. They seem to be forming a relationship with her and Bolin. I don't really know her that well. She's nice, she's a pleasant person, but I don't know much about her yet, so we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I kind of like that Bolin's finally found somebody who's just positive influence on his life, unlike the other relationships he's had. So we'll see how that progresses. I haven't got much to say about it at the moment. But Lin and Sue's relationship, this is kind of the core of the episode. So you find out that these two haven't talked to each other for 30 years, and it's heavily hinted at that it has something to do with their family, possibly to do with their mother. You find out that because Toph had such a strict upbringing, she gave her children all the freedom in the world, and that kind of backfired. It seems like there's going to be more of this in later episodes. We kind of only get hints and things about what went on, but that last scene with Lin where she's crying, speaks volumes about what possibly went on. Okay, then we have the other B story going on in this episode with Zaheer infiltrating the Air Temple Island. I'm starting to really like Zaheer as an antagonist. He seemed very different from what they've attempted before. His obsession with Guru Lahima is really interesting. I feel like I should have made a bigger deal about Guru Lahima in the previous entry in this series, because it's clear that he's actually going to be a major part of the motivation for these antagonists, and I'm thinking that like some kind of poem he wrote or text he wrote is going to link into their ultimate plan. Like there's a different way of living in this world outside of the established rules that the Avatar has put in place, and so forth and so on. He's clearly empathetic. That's really interesting. Like, he's not a sociopath. Like, Azula and Ozai were sociopaths in a lot of ways. Amon had a point with his revolution. Ultimately, his plan was a bit crazy, but he had a point, and we connected with him because of that. I'm really getting the sense that Zaheer is a completely rational person, and he's not, sociopathic, and that he truly believes his cause is just. And just like the way he was talking to I've forgotten the name of the airbender child, but he was talking to her. It's like he was trying to impart wisdom to her, like, you should know about Guru Lahima. He'll improve your life. You know, he's really bought into this way of life. I kind of get, because one thing that I think a lot of fans, when watching the earlier episodes, were a bit annoyed about was the fact that Zaheer seemed to immediately be able to airbend like a master, and they address it in this episode because he went through those doors, like he knew what he was doing, and he knows all this stuff about airbender culture. I think he might be a former air acolyte. I think he was a part of the group that that Aang tried to form. I think he might have been a former disciple of Aang. I think it's strongly hinted that that's the case, and the fact that Kaya immediately recognizes him once she starts talking to him about, like, his ideal, his beliefs and stuff like that, and talking about why he's in this room and what have you, and then she's like, oh wait, you're Zaheer, and then immediately starts attacking him. I'm excited to see what they do with Zaheer. He's proving to be a really compelling antagonist, one that's very different from what they've done previously. Yeah, and a huge improvement over Unalaq from last season. I know somebody criticised me for saying that Unalaq was evil and that's it. They mentioned that he was trying to reconnect the spiritual world with the human world. I get that. Yeah, true. Yes, he was trying to do that. But 10,000 Years of Darkness, that's pretty much the darkest shade of black, so he pretty much was just evil. Like, they tried to hit, like I said last time, they tried to hint at the fact that there's more to him than that, but ultimately there it wasn't. He kind of was just the darkest shade of black, no matter what they said. Yeah. So I'm really glad that we have a strong antagonist. Really hoping that this group become the antagonist through to book 4 as well. It would be nice to have an ongoing threat to finish off Korra, because I know book 4 will be the last season and that's done, which I'm happy with, because I think shows should end. Like, I'm not one of those people who want shows to go on and on and on and on until they're milked dry. I want shows to have a definitive ending and to know what the ending is. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see if they do actually carry on using these antagonists. Yeah, that's it really. Really impressed with these 2 episodes. Especially the Metal Clan, which I think had introduced us to a lot of cool characters. Gave us hints, not clarify, gave us hints as to Zaheer's motivations, what might be his ultimate plan, his connection to this poet Guru Lahima. Book 3's really good so far. I really like it. So hopefully this will continue to be the case. See you all next time. Yay!